Steaks we got, I'll trim up two different ones here. They're two different types of steaks. We've got, this guy here comes from the chuck end of the rib loin. It's got three different muscles in here. You can see this would be the spinalis, is what you want to feed to the judges. The spinalis is the most tender part of the steak. That's what you would turn to the front of your box or turn it in to present to the judges to eat off of. They'll end up cutting it in half, and they'll judge appearance and doneness on the back half of the steak, and then judges will taste the front half of the steak. So that's kind of how that goes. With these, you'll hear these called, if you go to an SCA event, you'll hear these called tryhards. There's a guy, and this type, we call this a spinalis steak, where it's got the wraparound spinalis, which is, that's what you would want to feed to the judges on this one. This comes from more in the middle of the loin. This one is probably a number 2 cut, second steak off the loin. This one is probably around a 7, maybe an 8. And then as you get more towards the tail end of the loin, you get more towards the strip side, and you'll start losing spinalis. And those are no good for competition. Good eating, but not for competition. You want to make sure you get some good spinalis on there for the judges. We're going to go ahead and trim these up, and everybody's going to freak out because I'm going to cut a bunch of stuff off of here and make these a lot smaller. Normally, you know, at home you just season these up, throw them on the grill, call it good. Competition, you got to take into consideration, how's all this stuff going to cook? Is it going to blow out? Fat's going to scorch, it's going to sear, it's going to blow out. You don't want that. We're going to end up cutting a lot of this off just for consistency's sake. We're going to start over here. And I'll tell you right now, hang on to all this stuff. This makes great hamburgers. Goes great in the grinder. Save the fat for if you're into making sausage or anything like that. Fat goes great in sausages. But basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off all this fat around the edge on here. That's going to scorch and get ugly. And this is my appearance side, so I especially don't want any scorched fat on this side. Now, where the muscles come together here, you do need to leave some fat there just to keep the muscles, to keep structure in the steak. You cut too much out of there and the muscles start to split, and that doesn't look good. So I always try to leave a little bit on there, just enough to keep it holding together, but not enough to be ugly. And then, same thing, coming around the spinalis side, you got all these hard fats around here. If you're like me, that's flavor, and you're going to keep that all up at home. But you don't want to give judges a mouthful of fat. They just want a bite of meat. You want them to judge the steak. You start throwing chunks of fat in there. If it didn't render out all the way, it'll knock down your texture score. Can throw off your flavors too if it scorches. So it's kind of, that's all going away. But you can come around that whole steak and shape it up. I'm not going to get too carried away with that today, just kind of keep this moving along. But that's one steak trimmed up there. These spinalis steaks are generally a little easier to trim as well because you only got basically the 2 muscles on there. You get into the chuck end steaks, they're usually a little more tender, they like to fall apart, and there's kind of a whole lot more muscle to it. So it's a little trickier to follow the steak around. But basically you just kind of want to follow that around and get that shaped up nice. This one's kind of funky. You can see, we can show that. We got, there's this thick vein of fat through there. There's probably going to be some silver skin in there, so I'm most likely going to trim all that right off. Gone. We're going to make it. Yeah, it's cutting a lot off. But like I said, save it, bring it home. Makes a great burger. Exactly, it's competition. You don't want to judge chewing on that. Like I can feel that right now, and I can feel on both sides that that's pretty firm. You can actually see there's a little bit of almost like cartilage in there. So
So that would now, do you get marked down for appearance if you don't have completely rounded cuts?
That's debatable. That's debatable. Sometimes, I don't know, I've turned in really clean looking steaks that are just nice and rounded, very clean, and I got beat up on a little bit. I've also won with those. Same thing with turning them in a little bit rougher looking. Sometimes you get beat up on it, sometimes it scores really well. So I can't say which one is right or wrong. It kind of more has to do with you compete enough, you see the trends in the areas you're cooking in. Like around here, a little bit less finesse on the trim seems to score better. When I go to Iowa, you better have it cleaned up really nice. So it can vary by region and the judges that are there.
Depends how hungry they are.
Yes. But so you can see that steak that started out as a nice big steak.
Right.
It's pretty small now, but I'm confident. Yep. Exactly. It's pretty. It's meat. I'm not feeding judges a bunch of fat, so that's good. This I'm just gonna throw.
If you guys want to come up closer and check those out, you're more than welcome to grab a good look at those right now. It's not doing us much good.
This, and I will just run through the spinalis on this. If I find any tight spots, then I will just beat it up. But for the most part, you don't really need to overly jacquard, overly tenderize. I'm just looking for any tough spots in there. Through here, I'll just feel around, make sure there's not any huge fat pockets that when I temp that I'm going to hit. This one feels really nice. This ain't going to need much of that at all. Alrighty. Well, then we get a little weird. I'm going to get some string out and start tying them up a little bit.
What does tying them up do?
Basically keeps them together. I'm going to throw them in the marinade. They'll soak in the marinade after this for about a half an hour. And basically just helps hold the steak together when I pull them out of the marinade so they don't fall apart. Some steaks benefit more than others. Like this one is going to be good to tie just because it's starting to come apart already. As that warms up in the marinade, it's going to get more tender and floppy. This one's pretty firm, pretty solid. Yeah, actually, it's coming apart pretty good too. So it's cheap insurance to tie it. Some steaks don't really need it. Some steaks really do. I just tie them all just to stay consistent. And what I'll do is I'll do a double wrap on it. I'll come around the back and give it a half a butcher's knot there. Just do 3 times around.
Do you have a preference over the ones that are coming apart or more firm?
Not overly. I tend to focus when I'm in steak selection. I'll be looking for the chuck end cuts, just because I like the way they cook better. They are a little more difficult to cook than the spinalis steaks, though. These will temp with the 3 muscles on there. Will temp pretty uneven. You'll get some really weird temperature readings on there, so you kind of need to poke around with your probe and take an average on that. Whereas the spinalis steaks, these from the center cut steaks, those cook consistently. They rest out consistently. When I started cooking steaks, I focused on the spinalis cuts just because they're a little easier, they're a little more forgiving. You can pull them a little early. If you pull a little early and you don't get as much carryover as you intended, they look nicer. If you don't get your carryover on the chuck end steak, it looks raw. So if you're a degree or 2 under on that, it looks way under. Or if you're a degree or 2 under on this, it looks pretty good yet. So it's a little more forgiving in that respect.
What are you shooting for target?
That can vary somewhat. Typically, with SCA, you're shooting for a medium.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yep.
Medium rare or medium?
Yep. Medium, because medium's hard. Medium is hard to. It's a short window temperature-wise,
Right.
and it's also texturally to keep the steak. You want to eat it to get good texture out of it at medium is a little trickier. But medium rare is pretty much everyone's go-to, and everybody likes a medium rare steak.
Right.
The trick is to get your marinades and your seasonings and all that in place, and try to make it feel more like a medium rare steak, so it's got a nice soft mouthfeel, but it's cooked to medium.
Okay.
Typically, I'm shooting for right around 140 for a finish temp. Yeah. That's the beauty with SCA. You get two steaks. I always try to pick two steaks as similar as possible, so that I can cook one for a test steak and see where that doneness falls in, see where the temperature's coming that day. Heat, humidity can all play into color and carry over, and anybody who's been cooking long enough on a grill knows that weather affects everything. So you can kind of see where conditions are that day, cook that one, see where it's at, and then make adjustment. If you need to go a degree or two more, or a couple degrees less on your turn-in steak, you got time to adjust on that. And then that'll bring us to marinade. I like to just throw it in a pan, that way nothing's leaking anywhere. With the marinade, I mean, it's nothing fancy there. It's just steaks in a bag. I'll leave them sit 15 minutes, and then I'll flip it over, and then 15 minutes later, pull them out of there. So we'll probably got a half an hour to kill. So basically, with these, I'll run them all the way. Like you can see, this one I ran 4 around the spinalis to make sure that's all held together good, and then circle a couple more around. I mean, this thing stays pretty solid. It adds a lot of support to that steak, so it doesn't move around too much once you get it on the grill. These guys, the chuck end steaks, these get really soft. These are the ones where I use 6 pins. These ones. Basically, with these, I always try to get that little diamond of fat in the center there. I try to get that poked in there, just to keep that from moving around, expanding out on me. And then I try to get the ends pinned down too, where the muscles come together. Try to make sure I get a pin through there. So there you can see how much structure that adds to the steak. Adds a lot of rigidity. Just makes it a lot easier to handle. I was actually poking through the bottom. I didn't get that one in straight. There we go. Beauty. That's I'm going to dump some charcoal quick here, and then I'll get these seasoned up. Oh. And then grill grates. And then grill grates. I don't know if anybody's familiar with Grill Grates brand. These are hard anodized aluminum grill grates. They got the valleys and the channels on here. These help get very precise grill marks and basically eliminate flare-ups. Any fat that's dripping off drips into the channels, vaporizes in there instead of dripping in the coals and turning into an inferno. So helps things cook more evenly and get real pretty. So that's, if you're interested in those, the Meat Block in Greenville carries those, and I know Kits and File Ace Hardware down on Calumet Street also carries those. They both stock grill grates for a bunch of different grills. And that gets us to seasoning our steaks. My competition profile is based on the Deadbird Barbecue DB180 rubs. We do have a few more in our competition recipe, but I'm not going to get that carried away with stuff today. There's a lot of great rubs on the market. Johnny Joseph has a great steak rub. There's the Archisippy combo, the all queued up, and the Hottie Toddy rubs. Be Extreme out of Texas. There's a ton of great rubs out there. Any one of them can win on any day. It's just a matter of pick something out, play with it, find something you like, tweak it to your liking. There's so many winning rubs out there, it's insane. But the important thing with that is your doneness and your texture affect flavor so much. I see a lot of people just switching rub brands out from week to week. You know, this didn't work, I'm going to this other whole thing. They'll change their whole recipe. And the biggest problem was their texture was bad. If a judge is sitting there chewing on a steak for too long, it just starts tasting nasty no matter what. I don't care what kind of rub you got on it. It's just not enjoyable. So that's one thing, is the fundamentals of appearance, doneness, and texture are the three biggest things. And there's any amount of winning rub combinations you can put on there, but it's kind of, I ended up with the DB180 just because I liked it and built upon it from there. So it's kind of use what you know. I also use the Boar's Night Out White Lightning. This is probably the most winning rub in SCA. I think these guys won the World Championship in, I think, 2016 or 2017, something like that. And it's just been winning ever since. So I always start with the light layer of that. That one's not open yet. There we go. This one's open. So basically I just go a light layer of the salt and pepper rub here. So that's a lot of people at home, that's all they put on it. And that's good, right? Because it still tastes like meat. But we're going to get carried away here. We'll go with the DB180 steak and beef, get a layer of that in there. One of the other things I really like about the DB180 combo is these are both sugar-free. So it helps to not have, your rubs don't scorch that way. You get any rubs that are high in sugar, you can get scorch, and scorched sugar doesn't taste very good. So I kind of try to avoid that.
Where do you find the DB180?
DB180 locally is available at Kits and File Ace Hardware on Calumet Street in Appleton. Otherwise, you can find them online at deadbirdbarbecue.com. Barbecue Superstore carries it. pretty much any of the major online barbecue retailers have it in stock. What was it? Barbecue Pro Shop out of right just down across the border in Illinois. They carry it. It's DB180 is very popular in the SCA circuit, so it's pretty widely available online.
Do you do both sides of your steak?
Yes. Yep. We'll do both sides.
You do the edges too?
I will do, basically on the edges, I will just do a light coat around the edges with the steak and beef on the Spinal side. I'll just give that a light coat, which I'll do that right when I flip them here.
What was the flavor profile of the third one you put on?
This was the DB180 Grill All,
Okay.
which is kind of a utilitarian rub. This stuff's great on all sorts. That's why it's Grill All. It's great. I haven't found anything I don't like it on yet, but it's kind of a very neutral flavor profile. It's almost hard to put too much on because it's middle of the road flavor. It helps really balance things out. I really enjoy it. And with that, I'll just take and give a little bit of this, give it a little color, a little flavor pop on that Spinal side. I don't do a lot on the edges. Just enough to give a little pop of flavor on there. And that's something else you won't see is a lot of people doing the paper towel thing like that. I like to throw it, when I flip my steak, I like to throw it down on a clean spot. I don't know why. I just started doing that one day and haven't stopped. And then we'll just follow up on the other side with the same process. And I know this looks like a ton of seasoning on here. If anybody grills steaks at home, you'd never throw this much on. But you gotta remember. Alright. And those steaks are pretty much ready for the grill now. Close. It's going to be probably a couple minutes for that grill top to get tuned in. I'll get it cleaned up here and get it ready to go. What are you trying to bring it to? I like to start right around 625. And I'll measure that right on with the infrared thermometer. I'll measure the top right on the top of the rails. I want the top of the rails to be about 625 when I start. You throw that cold protein on there, and it'll drop probably 10-15 degrees right away. And then I try to keep it right around 600 to 610 through the rest of the cook. One other thing I use when I'm drilling is a stake weight. I'll use that. Generally, I try to get my appearance side down first. I'll concentrate on getting my grill marks on one side. And stake weight goes on the grill. This one is hasty bit half heavy. About 2-3 pounds, 4 pounds. I've seen cast iron ones go up to like 6 pounds. You get real heavy, you end up with just really deep channels in your steak. Kind of weird looking. Some people have good luck with it. I haven't, so hence the light one. Got a little riser that I built out of that was just a Weber Smoky Joe rack with some stainless bolts. Basically, I'll run. My steaks will go on. I'll run about a minute to a minute and 15 for the grill marks per turn. Today I'll probably do a minute 15 because they're pretty cold. And then once I get my grill marks on all my sides, I'll get it up on the riser and let the temperature come up a little slow. So I'm not, you don't want it on those super hot grill grates, burning your seasoning, scorching the fat, all that stuff. It just helps kind of stabilize everything and keeps your appearance tidy. Which is kind of the opposite of the reverse sear that's so popular. But it works. One other thing, instant read thermometer. I highly recommend spending the money for a Thermopen. Not the cheapest thing on the market. They're one of the more expensive ones on the market. The MK4 is on clearance right now. They're selling them out. They just got a new one come out that I ordered yesterday. It reads in 1 second. This one reads in 2 to 3, which was the fastest on the market. Now they got one that reads in 1 second, so I had to go buy that. Duck fat is really popular. Good stuff. Sucks in the cold. It will turn into a rock in the cold. So I always keep canola oil on hand because that sprays no matter what, almost always, unless it's 10 below. And butter. I didn't do my butter. I always like to finish with a little butter while it rests. And I almost really failed on there. For the butter, I always use unsalted butter. I just dump plenty of salt on that steak. It doesn't need any more in the butter. So it's kind of one of those things where you control how much salt you put on the steak through your rubs. You don't need to worry about adding salt into the butter. And with the butter, with a stick of butter, I like to do a little garlic infused olive oil. Just adds a little flavor to that. I'll do about a tablespoon per stick. Nothing major, just a subtle hint of flavor. Just boost those flavors on the end of the steak. Just take a paper plate, wrap it in foil so that hot steak isn't melting that wax liner or anything like that. Doesn't stick to the steak. Juices don't soak into it. And with that, we got some finished rubs that go on there too. got these handy dandy little thumb grinders. These are awesome for applying little small amounts of rubs precisely. In this one I got DB180 also makes an all-purpose rub that I got in this one just to finish it off a little bit, and then a little bit of Smoke and Ghost in this one. Butter melts. That's getting happy. As soon as the butter melts, we can get a steak going.
What temperature are you going for the grill?
The grill, I run the, I temp the grill grates. I want 625 on top of the rail. So that's kind of, the thermometer, the grill thermometers are kind of useless at that point. I'll just kind of, when it gets where I want it, I just kind of see where it's at so I can monitor if the fire's coming up or if it's going down. So then I know if I need to, if it's that needle swinging, I know I want to check the grill grates for temp. But odds are, it's nice with this grill. There's enough surface area on there where generally you can find a spot. Once you're close, you'll generally find a spot you can close enough to cook on. There's with grills for this stuff, you can spend a ton of money on a grill. You can find a used Smoky Joe on the curb. You can win with anything. This one is kind of middle of the road as far as expense goes. That one was a $150 grill. People have won on Smoky Joe's, Weber kettles. PK grills are super popular. The M-Grills M16 is really taken off. M-Grills also makes a little C4, which looks like a little ammo box. It's just a cute little grill, but it can be a steak cooking machine. People have won on everything. So it's kind of comes down to budget. I bought this one because my budget didn't allow me to buy something more expensive. I'm happy with it. A little bit of gasket tape, and sealed the chimney up a little bit. And it runs like a champ. I have no complaints about it. But like the M-Grills M16, I think that's about a $1,200 grill if you buy it with a stand, and it's about the same size. But it's all stainless, made in America. It's a beast of a unit. It's pretty nice. If I had $1,200, I'd probably have one, but I can't justify that cost just yet. But there's all sorts of options for cooking. You don't have to, there's no right or wrong answer for equipment.
Just smell the garlic.
Yeah. It's nice. It doesn't take much. You just get that nice smell. With my rest plate, I like to actually prep this ahead of time. I'll brush it with butter and get a little rub on the bottom. And then when the steak's done, I'll butter the top of the steak and get a little rub on the top. And this is another thing that you won't see a lot of people doing it this way. But it's been working for me. So.
What does that do, putting the butter on there like that?
Basically, I don't have to worry about buttering the bottom of the steak now. I can just plop the steak on there, and even if this butter gets solid sitting on the cool table, it's gonna melt once that steak gets on there, and I don't gotta worry about flipping it over and buttering it, which is basically just simplifies the process. One less thing to worry about. And with the finish rub, I don't go real heavy on it. I mean, it's just a dusting on there, just to give it that final pop of flavor on the end. If you go too heavy on that, you can end up, it'll taste like just raw rub, which is not that enjoyable, but you just dust it on there. Those thumb grinders are great for breaking things up, getting the fine dust going on there. This bad boy. And that's pretty good. We're right around 622, 626 on there, so we're gonna get that rocking. These little gloves are handy. Keep you from burning your hands. Just provides just enough insulation under your nitrile glove to keep from burning your stuff. Grill grates, there is a tool. They make a spatula. It's slotted. It goes right in the grill grates. The way this grill is set up, I I can't get the spatula in there with this charcoal holder here, so I basically don't use my spatula, but it is nice. They do make, typically your grill grates would run lengthwise like this on there, but I had these and didn't feel like buying new ones, so that's what I adapted to. With this, not yet. I'm about to. I'll do. I don't get real fussy about whether I do duck fat or canola oil on the grates. I'll do either or. I don't really care. So I'll lube those up, let them smoke for a sec. Then I just do a light mist of duck fat on the steak. Not much at all, but just enough to help toast up the seasonings a little bit, fry them off.
Put a note in my phone. That's what he said.
Flop the steak on there, get that weight on there. And then I'll run about a minute and 15-second rotation on this and see where it goes. With the weight I'll typically leave on between 30 and 40 seconds and take it off. It doesn't really need to be on there the whole time. It doesn't hurt it to be there on the whole time. It's just a lot hotter when you take it off. So, I don't like burning my fingers.
Temperature and when the wind's blowing and the way my underwear's angled. Right. All depends if the red eating or something in the crowd. That piece in the crowd will get 2 seconds long. Scott, do you always use ribeye then?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. SCA is 99.99% of the time ribeye. I have seen, there has been a couple comps down in Texas that have been a New York strip, but it was Wagyu New York strip.
Is it always boneless rolled tied like that?
Yep. Don't forget to stay hydrated.
Drink your water.
It's not from the is it that they have?
It's the Texas breed. Because Japanese stuff is the real deal though, right?
Yeah, that's premium.
Yeah, Japanese. Yeah, American Wagyu is a crossbreed. It's Angus, you know, Wagyu Angus crossbreed.
But it's got to be better than your regular steak that's not Wagyu or not?
Typically, yeah.
More fat.
Meat block will have Texas.
Depends on the farm and the breeding, but yeah,
Just
I
wonder
mean,
if it's
typically it's going to be better. It should be prime plus, is what it should be.
They gave us like 100.
I'm not in your
About
water.
15 minutes to turn in the ribs for the competitors. About 15 minutes.
The hunt spawn.
No, I'm zoomed in way close.
Okay. Of course it's got to stay.
I think you're
Definitely not my prettiest steak.
What's that?
No, for Scott.
And this is going to be a $75 steak.
That thing is still cold. That's going to be on the ride for a while. And with that, while that's resting, I like to just go ahead and get a little more butter on there. Oh yeah, you're good. I won't butter the
So
camera.
what'd you cook?
It's okay.
It's cooked at medium rare.
I'm just getting footage.
I'm shooting for medium on that.
Okay.
With SCA, the goal is to hit perfect medium.
Okay.
Each judge has a color card with them that has an example of what
they think medium
what
is.
what the ideal color should be. So in theory, you're cooking to a color, not a certain temp.
Okay.
So for SCA, have judges gone through any training like KCBS?
Yes, yep. There is a certified judging class for it. So yeah, they'll run a certified judging class. So basically, get trained on the parameters, what they're judging for, what they're looking for.
Right.
Which is nice.
Yeah.
And then while it's resting, I like to just pull the pins out.
How long do you let it rest?
Depends. I'm gonna temp it and see where it's going at. Once it starts cooling back down, I'll generally put it in the box and start prepping it, getting it ready to go, turn in. But my rest will vary from 5 minutes to 15 minutes, depending on the stage.
272 002.
See where it
Well, at least I
is.
know I'm in 003. Take my pocket.
There you go. 30. That's still climbing up. So that's about 137.5 right now. It'll probably hit 138. We'll leave it sit there for a couple minutes and give it a cut.
Yeah. That's a key picture of the salt. There's something wrong with that beautiful steak on a paper plate.
Only the finest china.
Maybe one day I'll have something.
That's making my mouth.
I always got to remember to snip your strings. That'll be a DQ. What I do for the turn-in box, basically you get a clamshell takeout box. You get like a 9-inch clamshell. With this, the spinalis is up here, so I'd want that facing the opening of the box. I want it to hinge this way.
133.
That would be presentation right there. What they do is then they cut it in half. In the clamshell, there's a foil disc in the clamshell, basically so they don't hack through the box when they cut the steak. But they will cut the steak in half, and then this back half will be what gets judged for appearance and doneness, and then your taste, texture, all that good stuff comes off the tasting side, which would go to the front of the box.
How many judges at a table?
5 to a table. So it's nice. It's unlike KCBS where they drop that. You get 6 and they drop that
They
low
drop
score.
the lowest one. Do
Yeah.
they do the same thing?
No, it's just 5, and
Okay.
you're stuck with all the scores. It's frustrating at times when you get that somebody gave you a 9 on something. It's basically a perfect score would be a 254.5, because you can go appearance,
We'll start selling those here inside the building.
appearance, doneness, texture, all can go up to 10, and then taste can go up to a 10.9.
So you actually judge
overall
more categories in KCBS. You've only got 3 at KCBS.
Yeah, so
Okay.
you got 5 categories.